240 Irishmen served in the International Brigades in the Spanish Civil War, and 70 were killed. 6 volunteers were from Limerick City and County. Gerard Doyle, Joe Ryan and Paddy Brady survived. Frank Ryan died in Germany in 1944. Here we see him on the left with a Belfast comrade in Aragon in October 1937. Now we trace the last days of the 2 remaining volunteers from Limerick, Jim Woulfe from Athay and Emmett Ryan of Upper Catherine Street, Limerick City. Jim Woulfe was born in 1899 in Bridge Street, Athay. His family had a farm and a general stores seen here at the left corner. Woulfe fought in the IRA during the War of Independence and the Civil War. After being released from internment, he emigrated to Canada in August 1924. Woulfe joined the Communist Party of Canada and sailed to Spain, joining the American Battalion of the 15th International Brigade in March 1937. Maurice Emmett Ryan, born in 1915, came from a privileged background. His family owned the Desmond Hotel in Upper Catherine Street, Limerick City. He attended the Jesuit Crescent College. He lived on the continent from 18 years of age, served for a while as a steward on the luxury liner Empress of Australia. Limerick in the 1930s was under strong clerical influence. The celebrations in 1928 of the 75th anniversary of the arrival of the Redemptorist Order in Limerick obviously attracted wide public support. And in the early stages of the Spanish Civil War, Catholic Church propaganda against the Spanish Republic was vehement in Limerick, as in other Irish cities. At the end of August 1937, the Spanish Republican Army started an offensive to capture Zaragoza. One of the main points of fascist resistance was the old town of Belchite. When Spanish Republican troops failed to capture the town at the end of August 1937, the American and Canadian units of the Abraham Lincoln Battalion of the 15th International Brigade were given the task. It proved to be their bloodiest battle, lasting from the 1st to the 6th of September, fighting from house to house. The main fascist stronghold was the Augustinian Church. 3 groups of the Lincolns rushed the church from an abandoned factory and through a gully. One group managed to get inside the church via the western side door. The Internationals made a barricade inside and fired on the fascist defenders who fled. The church of San Agustin was now in Republican hands, but the town was cleared of the enemy only after 2 days of further house-to-house fighting. Jim Woulfe was mortally wounded by a grenade in the cloisters of the church, and he died on the same evening, on the 3rd of September, in the hospital of Ijar. Woulfe's death was noted in the Irish press on the 29th of November 1937. The last battle of the war was on the Ebro, when Republican forces crossed the river and drove south on the 25th of July 1938. By nightfall, the 15th Brigade was outside Corbera, which was soon captured. The next target was Gandesa, 6 kilometres to the west. This town was heavily fortified by Franco's troops, and they were also dug in on the mountain range to the southeast, the Sierra Cabals, specifically on Hill 481. If Gandesa was to be captured, this ridge had to be taken first. Placed on the floor of the valley on the knoll nearest the ridge was the 57th Battalion, that is the British and the Irish volunteers of the 15th Brigade. Beside them, on a higher knoll, was the Canadian 60th Battalion. Here we see the starting off points of the 4 battalions of the 15th Brigade on the 1st of August 1938, the day of the final fruitless assault on Hill 481. Maurice Emmett Ryan was the undisputed best machine gunner in the British battalion, and it was probably here that he met his death. He had a history of indiscipline, as noted in a denunciation of the 23rd of March 1938 to military intelligence of the Republican Army. However, Ryan was considered brave and outspoken. In any case, at Gandesa, he was executed by the British battalion commander Sam Wilde. One reason given for the execution was that he had fired on his own comrades as they struggled upwards to Hill 481, for which there is no documentary proof. Attempts by the British to take Hill 481 were called off in the evening of the 1st of August. Shortly afterwards, we believe, Maurice Ryan was executed. After Ryan's death, fighting moved to higher peaks further south to Hill 666.
Very sparse vegetation. You can see it's very rough. There's absolutely nowhere that you would be able to dig a trench. This is the situation in which not just the British but the Americans and the Canadians sat for perhaps 2 weeks. The soldiers were exhausted, tired. They'd been in battle, some of them for nearly 2 years.
That's right.
And sitting on the top of this hill, they were subjected to almost constant bombardment by aeroplanes and by heavy artillery. This is very hard rock, so what would be happening is the shells would be coming down, blowing up the rocks, which would then turn into razor-sharp splinters. So the shrapnel that is going to be wounding many of the people up here is not actually the bombs, it's the rocks themselves. So it's a terrible position to have to sit in, I think.
After the Nationalists had broken through the lines of the 15th Brigade on the 23rd of September 1938 near Corbera, the International Brigades were withdrawn, and the men came home in December to Britain and Ireland. The story of the Limerick volunteers in the brigades is told in a general account of the Irish on the Republican side.